Welcome everyone to Enharmony. One more opportunity to understand deeply our vital experience of true reality, what we know as the Tree of Lives. And today I'm going to expand the theme concerning the music of the Tree of Lives, but we are going to do it with an ancient diagram very popular nowadays, known as the Enneagram, seeing how it relates to the Sephirotic tree and also to the menorah, which is an expression of the Tree of Life. But we must have a very clear understanding of how the harmonics relate. And then I suggest having a quick overview of what we saw the other day. Remember that the harmonics, which are the pure tones contained in a single note, they all come in pairs. The unison is mirrored in the octave, 1 with 8. The second, the interval of second, is mirrored in the 7th when we invert it, 2 with 7. The interval of third becomes 6th with the inversion. The interval of 4th becomes the 5th, and vice versa. So we see how harmonics are mirrors, harmonic mirrors, which we can see in the spirals of nature, as we see in the 24 segments of the circle. See how 1 goes with 8, 2 with 7, 3 with 6, 5 with 4, and so on. And in this sequence, remember how there are 3 numbers that repeat, which are 9, 3, 6, but in 2 directions. One seems to go up and the other seems to go down, but as we are going to see, there is no up or down. We obviously have the energy that grows, represented by the apex of the vortex up, making consciousness and conscience expand, generating soul, the 6. But remember how in 3 we have the reconciliation or union of opposites, such as up and down, right and left, inside and outside. Therefore, in the divine soul, those aspects have been neutralized or reconciled. And then we have obviously the movement, which seems to go up and down from 9 to 3 to 6, 9, 3, 6, but we always remain in the center. This is where everything becomes stable. In true reality of life, there is no up and down, right and left anymore, subject or object. There is an integral conscience in which the spirit, the primordial light, obviously manifests, materializes, but in turn the matter is sublimated, spiritualized, vivified, and this is why the way up and the way down is one and the same. And this means that as the frequency of vibration slows down in order to materialize the spirit, then the frequency of vibration also speeds up, back again to the original source. There is no point of stop as we live in our chaotic planet. So when we have this in mind, we can understand how to read the true Tree of Life, leaving aside the traditional viewpoints which read the Sephirotic tree from top to bottom or from bottom to top. Let's forget that and go always to the center, to I am. That's the source of all the aspects, which are not 10 but 12 in total, even though we express them with 10 numbers, so to say. And we can see the harmonic mirrors, as the other day, 1 with 8, 2 with 7, 3 with 6. The 1 is repeated in Malkut, which is the purpose, the finality, developed like a tree contained in the seed. And notice how in this cosmos, every sphere is an expression of the whole. Therefore, we have every sphere in every other sphere. The finality, for instance, is not just an abstract idea, but it's found in Keter, for instance. The finality of the crown of life is distributing energy for something for which we need a space. And the more space we open without obstruction, the more energy flows. That's the 9, which goes with the 0, and we cannot separate both. They are related. Space becomes energy. Energy becomes space. Then we have the finality in the sphere of wisdom, and the purpose of wisdom is to step aside from evil, step aside from all destructive attitudes, situations. Then the purpose or finality of Binah, the understanding of life, is to have an integration of the binary aspects of life. We have to deal with opposite poles and integrate them in our experience as whole beings, something for which we need conscience. The purpose of conscience is to make us feel integrated in the universal wholeness. And the same goes, obviously, with the other spheres. For instance, if we take conscience, we can find that sphere in Keter as well. We must be aware of how to distribute energy to all those around, leaving a space for the flow, the intelligent flow of gifts that we have, without squandering anything. The integration of conscience in the aspect of wisdom is becoming aware of how different situations must be avoided, and we must be integrated in a flow of life in which there is no resistance, no destruction, so to say. And even though many diagrams of the Tree of Life represent it as the primordial man standing with the head on top and the feet on the bottom, I suggest reading it this way, so we can have the center as the source, radiating, spreading, and this center is the I Am, which in Aramaic is Enna, the great I Am in which we are. In him we move, live, and are. This means that we are only because the great Holy One is emanating his I Amness full of love, life, light. And this is what we see in all the 13 aspects, which are always radiating from the center of our being. And this is a perfect mirror of the 7 lights in the so-called menorah, the candle with 7 lights. You have it here more clearly. I have put on the bottom the columns 1, 4, 7, 2, 5, 8, just following the lines. 2 would come down, as well as 8 and 5. And then we would have this configuration where we can see the mirrors, the harmonic mirrors, 3, 6, 1, 8, 4, 5, 2, 7. 0 goes with 9. 1, the finality, the purpose, goes with 10, which is the development of the full cosmos, 1 and 0. Even though it's 10, keep in mind this is just a decimal symbol, but the aspects are 13 in total. And we see how the 1 mirrors in wisdom, having its own harmonic, which is 8. Wisdom expands with the structural splendor, consciousness, which leads to integrated conscience. Then we have mercy, represented by 4, mirrored or supported by the sphere of the force, Geburah, which is really the limitation and resistance. We must establish limits and have resistance so life can flow. We cannot just be whimsical, otherwise energy is squandered. As for success, Netzach is made possible by the vital understanding, Bina, and all of these aspects are the expressions of the great I am, Ena in Aramaic. We can say the primordial man. Each one of us must be an expression of this primordial man, which is really the universal body of the invisible one, the Holy One. This is why the expression is known as the verb or the name, even though the Holy One has no name as we understand it. And notice how when we complete these circles we have 3 spheres surrounding the central sphere, which is actually what we saw before and what we see in the menorah here. But obviously in the same way there are true expressions of the tree of life, there are false expressions, false symbols, which is actually what was made in Atlantis, which according to Plato had this structure. And this falsification has to do with the deception that we are living in a broken universe. There was a master of dances known as Gurdjieff, who said something very funny but at the same time very profound. He said, the mistake of God, and he was referring to the architects of the universe, the so-called demiurge, the mistake of God was making the universe in the form of an umbrella and not in the form of an enema. And thinking about this, I realized it's something very deep. In ancient times, some teachings used to say that in the universe, the roots are in heaven. We get the light, the love from above, those teachings say, and this energy comes down to us and we receive it. However, as we can see, no matter how much love and light from that God we receive, everything breaks up. Very few humans come to be fully developed. There is death, animals die, plants die, humans die, we all get sick, and this is because energy has become stagnated. The so-called octaves of development are broken, as Gurdjieff pointed out. This is why he said we must become enemas, we must clean the inside, allow the energy of life flow. And this is something very well expressed in another ancient symbol, which is the Celtic tree of life. You can see it in the logo of the channel. And in this symbol we see how the roots become the fruits and vice versa. There is a union of up and down, so there is flow of energy and there is no division anymore. And this is actually what we must become in ourselves, developing the octaves of our being, something which can be very well represented with the so-called Enneagram, this symbol, which was brought into the West by Gurdjieff himself. And what we see here is the development of the octaves. Notice how we have the vortex of energy, 936, as above, that energy, consciousness, and personality, soul, that grows, which are actually 3 examples of how this works, but obviously there are many more. Take for instance that in life, in order to grow and make energy flow, we need to develop not only the physical body, but the energy body that grows inside, the emotional body of life, the mental body, and the body of love. This is what we see in the Tetragrammaton. The Yud is the body of love, which is expressed through the body of life, the Hey, the mental body, and the final Hey, which should be an energy body of expression. In our case, it's the physical body, which is very dense, and it comes to die because it has not been fully energized. But when we develop fully, we can manifest those 4 bodies. And each one of the 3 lower bodies has 7 steps of development. And every other octave of development can be expressed with this symbol. So starting on the apex, then we can develop the full octave: do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Here we end up in a deeper octave because we move to a more subtle level of reality, so to say, developing more subtle bodies, vivifying matter. And notice something which I already said in the video of the octaves. Between mi and fa there is only a semitone. You notice? Between every note there is usually a whole tone because there is a semitone present. But here there is a missing semitone which we fill up with our will and consciousness. And interestingly, the following missing semitone is between ti and do. In Spanish we say si, do. And this missing semitone, according to the diagram, must be introduced between sol and la before coming to that interval, because the additional force or help is always introduced by the incoming of new octaves. If this is the first octave, this is the second, and this is the third. This is why we must introduce a semitone between sol and la, musically speaking, and this would sound like, which is very jazzy. This scale flows very easily. And if we play the scale without introducing the semitone, it seems it doesn't flow as well as the other. So we have a musical taste for this truth. And now notice how the 3 octaves develop considering those missing semitones. The second octave begins here: do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. The third octave begins here: do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, and do. And when we play this on the piano, we get a very relaxing sequence of arpeggios: re, la, fa, mi, ti, sol, and so on. I can show you. And this is relaxing because the voicings are spread out as in cinema music. But obviously this is just the musical aspect. Then we must understand how this takes place in other types of octaves. For instance, the octaves of food. As the master of dances Gurdjieff used to say, we need 3 types of food. The so-called physical food, which is an octave, the air that we breathe, and the vital impressions that feed the soul. The first octave corresponds to the development of the physical digestion that takes place in 7 steps, but always with the help of the incoming air. This is why conscious breathing helps in digestion, and it also begins a new octave, the octave of development, which is the growth of the emotional astral body. And then the third octave, which begins with the impressions, the vital impressions, which feed our soul, our divine personality. This is why it's important to live consciously, receiving impressions from everything. Even the food that we eat, we must eat consciously, breathing consciously, aware of how we are eating, what we are eating. In other words, we should not eat like animals. And in doing so, we help the physical food to evolve, to be sublimated, even though a part is left aside. And this development of octaves is what allows us to express more love, and therefore go beyond the destructive sphere of time. Time is represented by these numbers 1, 4, 2, 8, 5, 7, 1. We get them by dividing, splitting every number from 1 to 6 by 7. There you can see the sequence. 1, 4, 2, 8, 5, 7 is the first one. And then this sequence repeats all over again in the form of a canon, a musical canon. And musically speaking, it sounds like this. Which is, if you notice the composition that you listen in the beginning, even though I used the semitone between sol and la to make it more interesting. And then what I do is breaking this pattern symbolizing the breaking up of the mechanical flow of time. We must break many habitual behaviors, many reactions, and do it spontaneously with the force of love, the force of will, in order to escape the destruction of time. This is something that, for instance, Gurdjieff tried to do with the dances, forcing people to feel more consciously, think more consciously, and move more consciously, being channels of the divine will. Only by expressing divine will we can move outside the selfish manifestations of society. Actually, what makes people behave mechanically, what turns them into marionettes, is when their will is somehow deviated and focused on things that have no value, whether it is violence, irrational sexuality, craving for power, and so on. And obviously, selling will to the adversary depends on the lack of conscience, and also the imposition of a false personality, a false soul, which is a mortal soul, not the true divine immortal soul. Therefore, we must think of all these symbols as a way of understanding deeper, a way of growing. We are not worshipping any external god or any external symbol. Even the menorah is not a religious symbol for worship. It's a very useful symbol for understanding. Notice how in this configuration, if we move the 3 and 6 below and the 9 above and just shift the numbers, we get the Enneagram, the configuration of the Enneagram. So they are close. And notice how the Enneagram contains all the harmonic mirrors in perfect balance. 1, 8, 2, 7, 3, 6, 4, 5, with the axis marked by 9. Actually, they all sum up 9 because they express the energy that must grow. And we can also follow the octaves in the Sephirotic tree. Do, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Considering always the intervals, which are always in the middle, as you can see. And as I said, the Enneagram is very useful to classify events of nature. Even the Hebrew letters, which represent the DNA of manifestation, actually the 22 letters united to the 5 final Hebrew letters make a total of 27, and they can be classified around the Enneagram by considering their geometric value, their vibratory value, because this indicates the weight of consciousness that the letter has. Aleph, Yud, Kuf have a value of 1, 10, and 100, as you can see. And the same goes for Beit, Haf, Resh, which is 2, 20, and 200. I can show you if you are interested. This would be the final half with a value of 500, the final Mem 600, final Nun 700, final Pei 800, and final Tsadi 900. And surely many of you may wonder, what's the point of doing this? Well, as I said, each letter has a vibratory value, and this can be used to know the vibratory value of a name. For instance, spelled in Hebrew, my name, Fernando, would be Pei Resh Nun Nun Dalet Vav, and it has a value of 390, and this gives a total of 12, the number of Harmonia. If I add the Aleph between Nun and Nun, I would get 391, which gives 13. In both cases, it's a number associated with wholeness, Harmonia. I am a lover of studying this subject. Obviously, this doesn't mean that every person called Fernando is going to have an interest in these subjects, but very often this is because the vibration of the name is cancelled by other names, because we have several names and there are many other aspects involved, but in this case it mirrors part of my personality, and this can be done by converting any alphabet in any language into the vibrations of the Hebrew letters. Then we can analyze any name in any language, and when we take into account all the factors, all the variables, considering the full names and other aspects, then we can know deep aspects of the personality, the shadows, the virtues, tendencies of profession and life mission, and so on. Anyway, remember that above all, we must be rooted in our center, our beingness. We must become roots on this earth, be a light to others, so light and love can flow as it should, bringing the tree of life here. In this sense, we go deeper and deeper, becoming the symbol ourselves. When we find the primordial man inside, then we do not need any external symbol anymore. And when we manifest the true I amness with all its conscious love and living serenity, we no longer regard ourselves as servants of a higher external God, because we are not lower than the Divine One, and we are not slaves of any king, even if it's a divine king. And obviously, manifesting this divine will, becoming the tree of life ourselves, begins by expressing our true divine personality without copying anybody, allowing the flow of life energy and conscious love move through us, cleaning all shadows. This obviously makes us very passionate about what we do, but it's a passion in which we don't squander energy. We focus on what we have to focus and do what we have to do. Not more, not less. It's a challenge, but it can be done. And I think for now it's enough. I hope this video was useful for you. Thank you for listening, and until the next time, blessings of conscious love, life, light, and serenity.